Hey lovelies, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Bernie and this is Kisima, your watering well for all things faith and mental health. If you're returning and you watched last week's video, we went through the free workbook that I've been offering, a way of planning your best year yet. And if it's your first time here, welcome. And so this is what we're doing. We are creating new habits, new goals, new accountability systems for us to get what we've never had before, do what we've never done before in order to live a life we've never lived before. Ooh, I like that. Just came up with that on the spot. Anyway, and so if you don't have your workbook already, I'm still going to add the link below. Go see the last video. We went through the entire workbook. So it has sections around identifying what your goals are, how to analyze them with priorities, how to make them SMART goals, right, that have a specific result, a specific deadline, and a specific trajectory for achieving it, and also how to create your accountability systems and how to regroup or recalculate if things don't go according to plan. So go over to that last video, go through it, because what we're doing today is refining some of those goals. So if you have a love and relationship goal, this is going to be an awesome video for you to kind of dig a little bit deeper to, let's say, set intentions, set your goals, but also like clarify between what your declarations are of what you want your relationship to be, but then what active steps you can take to make that happen. And so let's jump right into it. It doesn't matter what kind of relationship status you have, whether it's single loving it, single hating it, single actively dating, whether it's engaged or in a long-term relationship, whether you are married, newlywed, or have been married for a long time. I feel like these tips are going to be actively applicable to every single person. And so I just want to start with 3 main points for relationships and how to, like I said, just be clear about what your goals are, but also what you can actively bring into a relationship. And so tip number 1 is always focus on building relationship. Like I said, if you are single, focus on building relationship with you first. And then if you're dating, focus on building a friendship with the person in front of you. It is a lot of pressure to have on yourself and on the other person, that on date 1, you kind of have to know if this is the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with, or even have a long-term relationship with. That's a lot of pressure with not enough evidence to show you that. So if you focus on making a friend, a lot of the pressure is released off of you, and then a lot of pressure is released off of the person that you're actually dating. So you can actually get to know each other without expectation that I have to be my best self because I'm in an interview right now, and if I don't do well in this interview, then I will never have a boyfriend, girlfriend, or whomever. You know, just make friends. You know, one of the things when I was dating that I used to like going in with is the person sitting in front of me is somebody else's spouse, right? Like, we don't think about that. Like, my spouse, like Derek, was actively living and walking this earth at some point. I just hadn't met him yet. And the people that I was dating, I didn't end up marrying them, so they were somebody else's spouse. And so what is the best way of me being a good steward of, if this person is going to be my spouse, great, but if they're not going to end up being my spouse, how have I enriched them? How have I created healthy boundaries for both of us? How have I made sure that we're not adding to the baggage that we bring into our future long-term relationships and marriages? And then on the flip side, you might be somebody else's spouse. So if you're going in there and it's like, okay, this is the person for me, and you give of yourself freely, whether it's in intimacy or whatever, and it ends up not being the person you end up with, there is a connection that's broken. There's a little piece of your heart that's left with this person. There's time and energy and money that you never get back. And so if you go in with a friendship expectation and mindset, a lot of those things get to be weeded out before you even commit to being with this person long term. Tip number 2 is I've already mentioned it. It's just managing expectations in terms of what this person can do. You don't go into a relationship for the other person to fulfill you. You go into a relationship as a whole person yourself, and this other whole person gets to live a whole life with you, or to walk life with you, already being kind of complete, content, clear about their purpose, their worth, and what they have to offer in your relationship or to the world. And so if you are going in without having that clear, this person is always going to disappoint you. Okay guys, so my camera kind of malfunctioned a little bit, so if things have shifted a little bit, that's why. But I was talking about point number 2 of managing expectations. And so Managing expectations is something that we are in charge of. It's not something that we expect the other person to do, right? If I expect the other person to make me happy, it's me who gave them that power and that responsibility. So if I end up feeling disappointed, it's on my part to resolve it. Either I didn't communicate something clearly, or I had an unrealistic expectation for the other person on something that's actually supposed to be my responsibility. So when I say that it's supposed to be two whole people who are coming together, then it's my joy is outsourced elsewhere. Like, not the person in front of me or my husband gives me my joy. My joy comes internally and from Christ, and you end up adding to my joy, being a way that I experience that joy, but you're not the creator of my joy. I hope that makes sense. So the other person is not responsible for making you happy. The other person gets to partake in happiness that you already have and happiness that they already have, and you just share that together. And so point number 3 is, and I realize that I still do this sometimes, and I've made a huge vow this year to stick by this one. This is like my top priority, is to communicate what I want instead of what I don't want. I have a tendency to say, hey, I didn't like when blah, 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 blah. And then end there. Versus, hey, I didn't like when you did A, B, C, and D, and what I would like to see moving forward is blank. Or even outside of loving relationships, like little things like, oh my gosh, I hope I don't miss the train. It's like, why even bring that idea into the situation? Because I'm already exasperated if I already feel like I'm running late. Versus like, I hope I catch the train. Right? Like, it's just a small nuanced response, but the difference it has on our well-being, on our mind, and our emotions and anxieties is huge. And so in relationships, the same thing. It's not like, oh, I don't want somebody who's going to cheat on me. It's, I want somebody who's faithful. And so even when you're making your list of the things you desire in a relationship, whether it's somebody who's funny, somebody who is loving, somebody who's kind, somebody who's compassionate, somebody who is generous, somebody who is fun, who is sexy, somebody who is a great planner, somebody who's spontaneous, creative, you name it. Anytime you put somebody who's not something, it's because you're comparing them to somebody who hurt you. Right? Like, if it's somebody who's not a cheater, it's probably because, like, either you've been cheated on before, or you know stories of people who have experienced hurt from infidelity. And so you bringing that into the relationship that you want, and it's not an item you want, like, remove it altogether. Just speak and declare and write down the things you want. And for everything that you ask the other person to be, hold yourself accountable to being that. If you want somebody who's faithful, be faithful. If you want somebody who's generous, be generous. If you want somebody who's creative, be creative. Even if it's not in your nature, it doesn't mean that, oh my gosh, I have to be spontaneous and creative all the time. It just means, like, every once in a while, I'm going to put these qualities to work, and I'm going to listen to what the person says, that things that they like that doesn't necessarily flow my boat or make me excited, but because I care for them, I'm going to be willing to get creative with that issue, or with that idea, excuse me. So focus on that. Now we're gonna jump into like the specific categories of like relationship status. And so for singleness, like I said earlier, it's going looking for friendships. And so now in creating a specific goal, like, how many times a month will you be dating? How many times a month do you want to go on a date? How are you meeting these people? Are you actively asking your friends to set you up with single individuals that seem like they may be a good fit for you? Are you using an app? Are you going out to like networking events, meets and greets, trivia nights for singles, speed dating, whatever the case might be? Enjoy the process if you want to go through that process. There are people here who don't fancy the dating process. I'm one of those people. I'm just really happy I met my husband the way I did. And so if dating is not for you, just actively look for ways of meeting individuals, even if it's not non-dating way, and then actively pursuing like things that you do for fun, and then you can meet people having fun there. Like, I like paint nights, and so I'd meet people doing paint nights. I liked going to do like tastings, and so I'd meet people doing tastings, or cooking classes and meet people doing cooking classes. It doesn't mean every single one of them I ended up going out with, but every once in a while ended up meeting somebody good, or spontaneously on the subway. Like, things can happen. So if doing like the speed dating stuff, apps is not your thing, find out what your thing can be and where you can meet people. Like I said, ask your friends. Some people have some really cute friends, so you never know. And then if you're in a long-term relationship, it's just clarifying what the end game is for you guys. So There's the people who want to be married and in a relationship with the person who doesn't see marriage as something that they want to do or want to get into in the next few years. And for you, it's like, listen to me. Here I am, like, I'm trying to have babies, I'm trying to have a family, I'm trying to be married. And so clarify those things. And those are the things, like, as in the singleness phase, when you're friends and there's no pressure of, oh my gosh, if I tell this person I want to be married or don't want to be married, they won't pick me. Like, you don't have those issues. So just talk it out early. Ask questions, and if the person tells you no, I don't want this thing, trust them. Don't feel like, oh, I can change your mind, so you don't want to be married now, don't worry, let's get into this relationship and I'm gonna change your mind. And then from a Christian perspective, like waiting till marriage is huge, and it allows you not to get like those feelings caught up in intimacy that can cloud judgment. And so if this is a person who's not willing to get married, the longer you stay in dating, the longer you're gonna be falling into sin. And so get clear on where you want to be with this person, where you see yourself, and then talking even about healthy boundaries that you're going to have in your relationship, that you don't find yourselves falling into sin. And so, and for any couple who's kind of currently engaged or courting, this is an awesome opportunity to see how you work together as a team and how to mesh your life together. One big thing to really be attuned to for the other person, but then for yourself, being aware of and offering, is just being an active participant. It can feel so overwhelming when you're planning a wedding, but also planning your financial future together, going through premarital counseling, figuring out where you're going to be living together, how you're going to mesh your spaces together, how you're going to like decorate. There's small things that you start realizing, like, oh my gosh, I'm super selfish in this area. Like, no, I want the living room to look a certain way. And Derek and I still sometimes go through that, like, that can't go there. And it's like, why? I'm like, because it doesn't look aesthetically pleasing. And so those things might come up as you go, of like figuring out like, okay, what neighborhoods do we want to live in? What's the commute going to be looking like? How much do you want to be paying for rent, or if you're buying, you know, what is the price range that you're going to be willing to pay? Even in paying for your wedding, like, what is the budget? What are the things that you're willing to negotiate on, the things you're not willing to negotiate on? How do those like make your budget fluctuate? Like, as you're figuring that out together, you're actively learning how each of you makes decisions, how each of you negotiates their terms, and how each of you sticks in integrity to what you've said you're going to do. So if you're noticing that hiccups are coming up, they won't suddenly disappear just because you got married, but those are things to write down, to bring it up together, maybe during like a date night, during a premarital counseling meeting, or in the moment if you're able to address that issue in the moment. And then for the married folks, this is something that I'm also challenging myself into, because it's easy now that I've lived with Derek for a while, now that we've gotten into a rhythm of being comfortable with each other, with how we offer feedback. It's easy for me to be like, hey, and you did this again, fix it, don't do it again. Hey, you did this again, like, bruh, get it done. Sometimes in the midst of giving that feedback, even though it's coming from the best intentions possible, it creates this like running list of things that about your spouse that you're picking at. Right? And so at the same time, if we're not actively tracking the things that they do well too, it's easy to totally start focusing on the not right list and forget all the huge laundry list of the things that they do amazingly well and that they add to our lives. And so for me, I have an active like do right list. Like, what are the things that my husband does well, does right, that I can praise him for in the moment, or that I can hold on to for encouragement whenever I run into something that's like not going well. And so I encourage you to do that for your spouse, because a lot of times, I've noticed this too, when I put stuff off for a while, it ends up blowing up later. Like, I thought it wasn't a big deal and I thought I would just let it go, but no, it was like, and you remember in December, you know, it's like, we're in January, like, you've been holding on to that for like a month, Bernie? And he asked me that. It's like, you've been holding on to that for a month? I was like, well, sometimes we're waiting for the best window to communicate something, but sometimes it's also just like out of pride, out of selfishness, that we refuse to bring it forth, because it's like, I just want to, I'm going to collect all this evidence, so when I bring it to you, I'm gonna get you and you're gonna have nothing to say. And so just think about that. A do right list, and on top of the do right list, like praying for your spouse actively. My mom and I, like, we were just having a conversation at some point, and I remember just bursting out and saying, you know what, it's so true that you can't be mean to somebody you're praying for. It's really hard to be like, and Lord bless this person, and be like, let me be catty with them, or let me be saucy. And so even with my spouse, like the more I actively pray for him, the kinder, the gentler I am. Because when I go to pray for him, God shows me me. I've said this so many times before. Anytime you go to pray for somebody else, God will show you you. How are you being selfish? How are you being unloving? How are you being mean? How are you being unrealistic? You know what I mean? Or what you're asking for, are you doing it too? Sometimes it's not even that you're being awful, it's are you giving in order to receive what you're asking, right? The Bible talks about giving, it will come back to you in good measure, pressed down, shaken together. So if I want love from my husband, am I being loving towards him in the way that he receives love? And so think about that for your spouse specifically. And I try to make this as broad as possible and to highlight all the different types of relationships out there. But if there's something that I missed and something that you feel that you notice came up for you, like, talk about it down below in the comment section. And so until next time, lovelies, this has been great chatting with you. Next week we're going to be talking about another major area of New Year's resolutions, or kind of when you're planning your year, which is health and fitness. So see you next week. Bye.